first question I want to ask, how many of you are in InfoSec already? All right. How many of you are in IT industry? All right. How many of you are still maybe diving to getting to IT or interested, showing interest? Okay, good. So we got a good variety of people here who are already in the field, some are new but want to learn. So when I was really thinking about what presentation I want to make, I was started looking at how if people have searched about how to build a home lab from scratch, like from zero experience, and I started searching YouTube videos and research, and I really couldn't find something properly documented that will really show you a walkthrough how to do XYZ steps, and because obviously there's so many things you can do in terms of building a home lab. So I hope this presentation I gathered together will give you a couple of concepts that you can build on your own, and assuming you're really on a budget, you don't want to spend nice and fancy stuff, probably no over $1,000, maybe under that. And with that, you can invest yourself and really get to learn a lot of security tools. So before I get into that, I want to talk a little bit about myself. So I work for Raymond James Financial. I do vulnerability management. I'm specifically in the blue team. Raymond James, a large Fortune 500 financial company, provides financial services, for retirement for all the clients. So I work in the IT department, specifically in security. I graduated my master's degree in cybersecurity at the University of Tampa last year. I'm currently certified in Certified Ethical Hacker, GIAC Python Coder, and GIAC Certified Windows Security Administrator. During my personal time, I enjoy playing video games, get a PlayStation 4. I love traveling around the world, and also enjoy scuba diving. And now going further into the home lab. So what do you guys think of how a home lab would generally look like? I'm sure you saw the first picture at the beginning. That's the first picture you saw. That's my home lab. But what do you guys imagine you think it would look like? Do you have any ideas? Has anyone thought like it would look something like this? Something like, how many of you seen the movie The Matrix? All good green codes back then, how they started hacking. That's what we always thought. We've been so enthusiastic with security and seeing things like that. We're willing to have a bunch of monitors and things set up, and unfortunately, that's not really how we are, what we use as a lab perspective. But traditional thing, how many people I think will think could potentially look like this if you want to be nice and fancy. Typically, people who are gamers who like to do streaming live games, they typically have a nice gaming station like this, and that looks really nice. It could be a good ideal as a building a lab, but obviously, there's a lot of things you'd be spending money on in terms of nice keyboards and monitors and the amount of how much it costs a laptop. But I'm just here really give you a walk through the slides of, typical home lab setup. You can set up in your own time, and when you really develop from time to time, if you have the resources and capabilities you want to build up. But that's just a really quick review of that. But I'm going to really talk about a couple of things. Someone who really has no experience, where to build up, and you're really on the budget. You don't have more than $1,000. You don't have money to spend like a Razer laptop. You want to spend something nice and affordable to just basically mess around and find vulnerabilities, whether you're a red team or a blue team. That's the purpose of what I'm presenting you. So we talk about hardware. So we talk about what types of equipment you can buy. So by the way, I brought some equipment I bought from my lab. Feel free, you can take it and pass it around if you want to see how it looks. Some that have a Fortinet firewall, have a TP-Link router, and a network switch from Netgear, so feel free. Additionally, I'll be talking about networking, so how to design your own network diagram to map your entire home lab. Virtualization, so which virtualized hypervisor or you should be using for running your virtual machines. Network monitoring, IDS, IPS, so here we talk about what type of security monitoring tools you can set up within your lab environment. Vulnerability management, we talk about what types of scanners you can scan in your own environment, whether vendor-based or open source tools. firewalls, we talk about software and hardware-based firewalls, secure information event management tools, so SIM tools you can use to push for all your event logs to a SIM tool, and what virtual machines you can install free in your own lab environment. So the first thing I want to talk about is hardware. So like I mentioned, for some of you who are really stretching the budget, I started looking into what things you can buy on eBay. I think what I really like with eBay, they really sell a lot of refurbished stuff. For those who are still not sure, if you like eBay, because sometimes it could be a scam or they don't know what they sell you, could be something stupid. But I do trust eBay in certain, depends what you're looking for, and you gotta be careful what you look for. But I think most of these, what you're buying is something used, refurbished, because the purpose is just messing around with your lab environment. So I personally bought a desktop precision, I think the one on the top, and it's set up with 32 gigs of RAM, DDR2, that's like an old version, but it still runs pretty smooth. Intel Xeon cores, so basically like server cores, about 8 cores I got, with a 1 terabyte of HDD hard drive. Fortunately, HDD hard drive nowadays is relatively slow. Solid state drive is the way to go. So the good thing, so for those, if you want to buy a desktop that includes regular hard drive, but you want to upgrade to solid state, you can actually buy those like in Amazon for a very cheap price. So I was going to show you really quick. You can buy probably a decent solid state here, like probably $65, or Crucial is a good brand. I bought this one I think a couple years back, it was about $50. And this one is solid state. Depending if you're sending this off on a desktop, I think M2, if I remember correctly, don't quote me on that. You put it on your root machine and set up your own OS, and there you can spin up your main host machine. It will run very smoothly. So that would be such a relief from using traditional hard drives on those. But there's so much you can do with it. Depending what's in your budget and what you're looking for, others you can spend a little more money, and it already includes solid states, and it also has graphics cards. So if you probably want to build a set of your video games in there, you probably includes as well. And the other equipment is like a router. I think I personally don't use the ISP one because those are kind of limited in the ISP, so I'd rather buy like a separate one like Netgear or whichever your favorites, your choice. I personally bought Netgear because I like that you can really see the interface. It has more other capabilities you can do versus an ISP one. So I like you can see you can actually upgrade your latest version of the router. So that's pretty cool. You can do that, stay up to date on that, and you can manage your IP subnet and your DNS and so on. So these are good things you can, as a start, you can begin with to where you can buy, because this is going to help you really build up, which the next thing is to set up a bunch of virtual machines. Any questions on that? Any questions so far? Yes?
I have one comment and one question. Regarding the systems, if I'm not mistaken, Dell actually will sell refurb systems directly. They have a section, a lesser traveled section of their website that if you work your way through the website in the proper manner, you get to an area where they sell their things directly. If you want to trust eBay or third parties for whatever reason. Another thought or question, do you have any comment, pro or con, or do you have any opinion on the idea of using OpenWRT on any of the routers that are they're listed on the OpenWRT website for flashing the firmware that those routers use open source router software?
I personally have not used that before, so unfortunately I don't really have much opinion on that area because I'm not too familiar, fortunately. But as a router, when I really started, I just really start going with the basic configurations we have. Well, unfortunately, I don't know if that's recommended. Anyone else?
I have a little bit of older experience. It's been a long time since I messed around with it. I think it was back DDWRT days. Anyway, those are an option if you want to look into using that type of software. You should be aware of any potential risks associated with using those software, whether they have vulnerabilities or not. But especially with these kinds of labs, you don't necessarily have to hook them up to the internet. You can certainly have an internal network that's inside of your other network, and then you obviously mitigate some of the risk of having something like that. Also, they can have somewhat of a learning curve, whereas these are, directly, you can just buy them, put them up in place, and then get them going. So just something to consider.
So this is basically a baseline where we just start to begin with when you're not a lot of experience. The next thing I want to talk about is networking. So here is what I think is very important is when you start, you have your equipment set up in your lab, and then it's recommended to start building your own diagram from scratch. So this diagram, I built it by myself from the ground up, from scratch. Really had much experience with this. I built it from time to time. By the way, these IPs are different, so always keep changing. So if you're getting these, these are different. But I started thinking more of like, all right, what do I have set up in my own wireless environment? So most of the stuff I have wirelessly is my personal devices, whether it's tablet or my printer, my phone. I will have 2 computers, and one's for personal and school. I have also a game console that's connected wire, so I specify there. And from here, I start, going with my own main router. So I originally have an ISP one, and then I switched it to a Netgear one. And in there, I implemented this Cisco OpenDNS. So for those of you who know, so the DNS that comes included for your ISP will have a general one. I personally don't like those because they're typically slower, and then technically they monitor your traffic potentially. But other DNS like Cisco or Google or Cloudflare, they're usually pretty very good DNS you can set up on your own, because those not just your traffic could be potentially private, but also it will be much faster when it comes to reliable connectivity. I personally think DNS, OpenDNS, what I like is that they have content filtering. So for those who are parents and we don't want your child accidentally going to adult content, or you can set up what filtering rules and automatically box them. So things like that. Obviously, or if you're by accident you get redirected to another page you're not expected to go, and maybe it's malicious page, and then will be blocked if you set up web filtering on that. You could have a lot of capabilities doing that. So once I start building my own wireless LAN, then I start moving to my lab tool. So I built desktop, that's where my lab is set up. And then there I put like another square bubble, which is all my virtualized machines. So the computer icons more like virtualized. So these are all the virtual machines I start building up from time to time, and put an IP space. And as you can see, I have a PS10 firewall set up. That's still kind of in progress. That's how I would love to expect it to look like, but it's still working some of my configurations I have in there. So it's a project I'm going to have. Then I start expressing more interest in, separating my lab, separating the IPs for pen testing purposes. So I set up Metasplittable 2 and Catalytics. If you see, I have 2 Catalytics, but I set up a second network interface for another IP, so they don't be the same in the same subnet. So everything there. Firstly, I connect it to the internet to make sure all the install packages are good to go, but then I disconnect that, and now everything will be internally. So when I'm trying to paint outside of the internet, it won't be routable at all. So everything is internal. So any conducting any testing in my own environments will be internally. Same for the malware lab, for if I'm dealing with any particular malware files that have been infected with malware. A good source we can use is Remnuts. I'll be talking about a little bit later what it does, but there I separate with another Windows 10. Basically, I clone it from the original one right here, and there I separate the IP space so you can start, doing reverse engineering tools what we can use within Remnuts. So I started spending that how I wanted to see my lab. This is something you build time to time. It's really hard to really think how would you start, but this is a really good starting point to you really progress yourself where you want to go. So where you want to be a red team, you just want to really do pen tests, then you can change this completely and be a whole pen test lab, and you can set up targets however you desire. But I always wanted to go on my own time. So this is I've done it when I was still a student at UT, and I was still working a regular job, like a help desk, making minimum wage, and I was still just running, get a lot of experience to eventually move myself up and then look where I am now. And this is what I started doing in my own free time when I get a chance. And so I designed this diagram in Microsoft Visio, but there's other diagrams you can design on your own. For those who are students and either graduated or are still current students, depending on your school institution, you can get Visio for free with your students' accounts. That's an advantage for those who can't. I believe you have to get probably a license that may cost. I'm not sure of that. Yes?
Another alternative option, if you don't have access to a school account and you can't get Visio for free from Microsoft, or if you just want to use something else, what I used to do was I would go to look for an online one. There are some of these that you can build these things out online, but it charges you to save it. So what you do then is you just build it out, take a screenshot, save that on your computer, you're good to go. So, just a little hack there for you.
Again, basically, I don't want to sound like I'm just talking it all out. Feel free to give any comments. Not everything is here is perfect. We're all constantly learning. So anything you have any comments or you want to talk about, yes?
Sorry.
You can go.
When you're building out a diagram and capturing your network segments and like inventorying assets in there, like where would you normally begin? Like starting at your external firewall, working backwards, starting at like a particular host and working upwards, or?
So I started with my wireless one. So you got the WAN and the LAN, so wide area network and the local area network. So I started firstly with my local. So everything I have here in the local area network, I want to change it a little bit different. It comes with 192.168.0.1, which is pretty traditional everyone has. I started really putting it, naming it differently. So start with .3, .x. So x basically is any number because this constantly changes every time I go home. Like the Wi-Fi, the IP constantly changes. So those are DHCP enabled. You could all do this configuring that straight from the naked router. So you basically type in the web browser, log into 192.168.3.1, and then you get the router interface. You log in credentials, and you can there set up your LAN for DHCP. How big you want to have your network. So if you want to have it limited, if you don't think you have a lot of guests at home, then you can put it smaller, but it depends. Or if you have a lot of people or a lot of devices connected at home, then you can spend that for depending subnet. I'm not an expert on subnet, so that's why I kept it /24. I didn't want to mess around with that, but that's something I would like to expect to do in the future. But I think it's good to you can be specific. The rest of that's a large network. I don't really have a lot of devices at home, as you can see, so you can always play around with that. You see also Cisco and DNS. Those DNS names are the standard one for Cisco. So those you put that in your router, and then everything should be automatically done for any device to get connected. So if you go on your devices, you can see that you're connected, you get the DNS from Cisco, so it won't be your ISP ones.
What's the initial cost and subscription cost for FortiGate?
So FortiGate, well, I don't have a license in there, so the one that I was passing around, I just have the standard one. The license costs like a couple grand, but I got this, someone gave it to me, but the license expired, unfortunately. Yes?
Yeah, if you're looking for a firewall, something I can recommend from personal experience, OpenSense and PFSense have different firmware flashes that will support old hardware, like WatchGuards, certain Fortinet models, Sonic Walls, or you can put it on a homebrew router.
Yeah, there's a section I'll be talking about firewalls, so actually I'll be talking about that part. But we'll get there. Any other questions for this slide? Yes?
Just one comment, one question. If I'm not mistaken, LibreOffice has a Visio-like tool that will actually read and write to Visio files. So we could use that as an alternative to Microsoft Office for that purpose. Not obviously doesn't have the stencil sets that Visio has, but anyway. Question: any strong opinions about leveraging a single wireless LAN device for both production home use and lab use versus having two separate physical wireless LAN devices, one for production home and one for your personal lab, presuming that that your whatever single device you would use supports the wireless VLANs, etc. Logical segregation with bridging, for example, or routing.
I mean, it depends. I mean, how you want to set it up. Like my second router, which is that one, the TP-Link, I really have that just for internal, so I turn off wireless. No, I don't. And the purpose of that is really having everything wired. But I don't really explore if I have two wireless going around, but I personally did it because if it's not used, I don't want people seeing that, scanning around. So if you're not using it, then use it, but I would just only set up. Technically, I have one wireless and the other one's kind of acting as a wire. But other than that, I mean, in traditional companies, they obviously have different where you work, smaller, large business, they probably may have different wireless stuff. So if you want to replicate what a traditional company has in your lab, that's something that's a good worth exploring. I personally have not gone through that, but did that help answer your question?
Well, my concern was more of having one versus multiple wireless LAN hub devices for the sake of having a home lab and a home daily use network. I just didn't know if anyone had any strong opinions about whether one should have a separate dedicated device for the sake of the lab versus if you use proper setup processes, if you can use one for both, if you set it up properly.
I think it would help with the bandwidth distribution more than anything when you're segregating LAN different routers. I think that would
Physical
help.
hardware.
Yeah, I think it'll help channel that.
Ensuring your meetings stay sandbox.
Yeah, I mean, this part is all sandbox there, everything
Yeah,
else.
and that's why I have the two routers and the firewall.
Yeah.
In general, I agree with what the others were saying. Segmenting the network is probably the best idea. At least that's what most people from a security perspective would say. Obviously, if you don't have the financial means to separate the networks, then do what you have to do. But if you can have the two separate devices, at least two separate devices to segment the network, it's going to benefit you in a number of ways.
I would say to add on that, if you're gonna do two devices, make sure you pick different channels, just to avoid collision internally. Personally, I have a lab one that's on one side of the house, the main one, and then one just for my ring cameras, because I'm
Yeah, we
carrying
use the same thing. I got like 4 routers.
So if somebody breaks in, gets physical access to a ring camera, they're just getting to that ring net, and all they can see is all my other ring cameras.
I do agree on that. I mean, segregating, I think, is very important from a security perspective, because if one VLAN gets compromised for, someone was getting in and they're trying to ladder around, then they probably won't be able to reach out to the other side if it's, if it's segregated and you have it configured properly, or any other tools that you're using to block that traffic. So yeah, it's important, seeing companies around like Target, they get reached and then just everything is all at one network. So I think that's obviously very recommended there. That's a lesson learned to really segregate your network for multiple channels like information. All right, so I'm gonna move on to virtualization. So over here, the question is, which one would be better? You should start setting up virtualization for VirtualBox or VMware. The answer is it really depends. Mostly new computers or new laptops generally will work best on VMware because the capabilities you can do with virtual machines. Unfortunately, my lab, because it has old processing, it's still running. We'll be using VirtualBox, but VirtualBox is still a pretty good virtualization for what you need to do for lab purposes. Both of them are great, other than VirtualBox is free, and VMware, at least the player is free, but only one virtual machine at a time. But the premium one will cost for a couple bucks. But if you could technically get a key on eBay if you're interested for about $5. You'd think it may be scam, but actually I bought one, spent $5 for the key a couple years back, and so I'm not been caught. I think it's it still works. So for those who still you think you're limited, you want to try VMware, it still works. Other things that I like VMware that for when you set up virtual machines, specifically Cal Linux for penetration testing, the full screen it already gets resized when in VirtualBox you have to install other tools to basically do that on your own. So, but other than that, both of them are pretty good. They're user friendly. What I like VirtualBox is pretty friendly on setting up the hardware and setting up how much memory you want to use. You can always change it time to time. Creating snapshots, so if you think you're building this virtual machine for the first time, but you think it can fail, you create a snapshot and you keep that as a backup safe, and for the moment you mess it up, you have another working backup, and now we should be able to start with your laptop, which I believe the same thing you can do in VMware. So whichever works for you and whichever lab you're gonna set up, whether it's your laptop or you're buying a desktop. Both of these are great. Do you have anyone has opinion which one they like personally? Have any experience have you ever done? Yes?
I have a question. Apart from stability and security updates, is VirtualBox still being actively evolved, product managed by Oracle? Is it still, they're still making features for it and stuff?
Yes. Yeah, I'm still receiving updates, so every time I try to refresh my lab and
Well, I mean beyond just stability and security updates, they're actually evolving the product. Yeah, they are.
Yeah, so with VirtualBox, caveat, if you're going to be using any kind of USB pass-through, if you're doing anything with like wireless hacking, there is a separate set of tools you have to download and install that matches your version. They split that package up to make it a little faster. ESXi you can also do for free if you want to host a hypervisor, but there's a cap on how many processors you can do for it. And another good free alternative is called Proxmox, Promox. It is a free hypervisor. It's enterprise scalable. They have support that you can add on to it. It's a little bit of a learning curve, but it does work on pretty much everything I've thrown at it.
yeah,
Bare metal hypervisor.
Yeah, bare metal hypervisor.
yeah. So those are good alternates. The ones that I picked there, these are the most commonly used. I was going to show you. So it's real. You can get those products for very cheap, for interesting things like that. But just letting you know. The same for virtual machines if you're interested in getting. Any questions from here? All right. So the next thing I want to talk about is network monitoring, IDS, IPS. So once you really got your virtualized environment, you got your hardware set up, and you want to set up, your network monitoring tool, so where you want to monitor your traffic, see visibility, where you want to go. How many of you have used Wireshark? Majority of people? Okay, good. So this is a very common network analyzer protocol that's very used to capture packets. I think a key takeaway, going beyond what you're looking for, especially use the filter. Filters are very important using because you don't know what exactly you're looking for, what's happening in the traffic. There's going to be a lot of gibberish things that are going to be happening. So it's obviously depending what you're looking at, whether it's a source, an IP, which protocol you're using, a filter, this is also very important. And then you can dig in further what's actually looking for. So if it's malware related, then you have a probably better idea of what we can use in the filtering. But if you want to use something better than Wireshark, one of the tools I came across that person like doing is Security Onion. How many of you have heard of Security Onion? So Security Onion is basically it's an open source Linux distribution, network monitoring, do intrusion prevention, intrusion detection. They have a lot of tools packaged all together. So they have a lot like Kibana, they have Snort, Suricata, Bro, and among others that provides capability for creating and selling your own monitoring system for detects any exploits or known malwares. You can find and you can go dig in further those IDS and alerts. What I like this is all packaged in the virtual machine, so you can get that for free. So if I show you the sites, it's a nice open source. You can download it, put it in your own virtual machine. There's a video tutorial you can set up. It's a pretty good experience doing it. My challenge when I was setting that up is to really be careful what internet interface card, because one of them will be your host and the other one will be the one that's listening. So you've got to make sure how you configure that properly. But it's a great package to use for, look at visibility, what you can see for potential traffic. So, and yes.
Oh, I'm gonna wait till you're done. Can you give us an idea of what your security onion looks like from a hardware perspective? Like how much hard drive space you need? Kind of how beefy is your system for security onion?
So security onion, I think doesn't cost hardware based. I believe I put it like 4 gigs of RAM. You don't need a lot of resources on that. But you should not put it as a minimum. I think actually you may need a little bit more than that, at least up to 8 gigs, because because I know that when I started like lower 4 and 2, it was very slow. So it was taking a lot to go loading up a couple tools, and I think setting up at least 8 gigs of RAM and the cores, it depends what kind of cores you have. 1 or 2 is reasonable depending on your environment. Because it could take a couple of resources to maintain that. At the same time, if you want to spin another virtual machine, especially if you don't want to, because you want to see you probably want to set up 3 virtual machines. So one will be your victim, your attacker, and you're probably trying to attempt an exploit, and the one in the middle will be security onion to see if that's working or not. So any exploits you want to attempt, and you want to see if that's captured or not, then maybe it's a good idea of doing it. So 3 virtual machines, depending on that, you probably may need. So one virtual could be 4 gigs or 2 gigs. Depends on if you're in solid state and you have decent processors, you can be up to 2. So 2 and 2, and then this one leaves 4 or 8. So you're getting there like at least 12 memory running, and then you gotta make sure you leave some space for your host, or else you're gonna make it very slow and everything could be shut down.
What tools are you running on your second to show? Like when, I know Snort can be a bit of a power hog. Are you running Snort and everything continuously?
I personally use Squeal, so if this screenshot is a Squeal, it's basically another IDS you can use. That's basically just detection. It doesn't prevent anything there. It's just basically looking at alerts you're receiving from the sort of destination.
So would you recommend is a good IPS?
Good IPS or Snort.
Okay.
Yeah, so for those of you, how many of you have taken the course for the CH, or how many of you are certified CH? Okay, so I took that course, and what I liked is one of the things they cover is the security onion part. It's funny because obviously it's all about penetration testing, but I think the instructor covered a little bit how to configure security onion, and that was very interesting because I thought it was a little bit